Marcus's hand was on my elbow before I even saw him coming. "Kara." He smiled the way people smile at someone they're about to ask a favor from. "We want tonight to be comfortable for Nia. It's better if you know." I didn't know, but I understood. The ballroom behind him was all warm light and champagne flutes and people who'd paid $0 a plate to celebrate my sister. Nia Okonkwo, top 40 under 40. The banner hung between two columns near the stage, her name in gold letters, her company logo underneath. Okonkwo Construction Group. Built from nothing, the program said. A woman who refused to let anything stop her. That part was true, actually. I looked past Marcus's shoulder. Nia was at the center table, laughing at something the mayor said. She had on a navy dress I'd never seen before. Her hair was different, too. Shorter. I wouldn't have known that if I'd stayed home. Marcus's grip on my elbow tightened just slightly. "It's not that we don't want you here, it's just..." "I'll go." I said it before he could finish. I didn't need to hear the rest. I'd heard versions of this before. Different rooms, different reasons, same outcome. The parking garage was cold. March in Meridian means 42 degrees and wind that finds every gap in your coat. The valet kid watched me walk to my car. He was maybe 19. He'd seen me go in 40 minutes earlier, dressed for a celebration, and now he was seeing me leave before anyone had touched their entrees. I could feel him trying to figure out if he should say something. He didn't. I sat in my car for a long minute with the engine off. The concrete pillars stretched out in both directions. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. One of them was flickering, the third one from the elevator. I know because I counted. I was an engineer. I noticed which lights were failing. My name is Kara Okonkwo. I'm a structural engineer for the city of Meridian. I have a professional engineer license, number 48,732, that I earned in March of 2020 after 4 years of experience and 8 years of night classes before that. I know how to calculate load paths and shear forces and whether a building will stand up or fall down. I'm very good at my job, but in my family I was Nia's little sister. That was my title. That was the only one that mattered. I started driving. Not home yet, just driving. Here is what I knew about my sister. Nia was 4 years older than me. She was the one who handled our mother's funeral when I was 19 and couldn't get out of bed for 3 weeks. She used the life insurance money, $0, to start a small contracting business. She'd failed the fundamentals of engineering exam twice by then. Once in 2013 and once in the spring of 2014, right before Mom got sick. She never tried again. I think that failure sat in her like a splinter. The kind you can't see but you feel every time you move a certain way. So she built around it. She built a company that didn't need her stamp because she could hire people with stamps, or so everyone thought. She built a reputation. She built a $0 business with 47 employees and a glass office park on the edge of town. She built herself into someone the mayor wanted to sit next to at dinner. And me. I built buildings that didn't fall down. I also built something else. Something I never told Nia about, or anyone in the family. 3 duplexes on the north side of Meridian. The first one I bought in 2021, a tired brick building on Lansing Street with bad plumbing and good bones. I fixed it up myself on weekends. The second in 2022. The third last summer. Between the 3 of them, they're worth about $0 and I don't owe a cent on any of them. I bought them the way I do everything. Quietly. Nia thought I made $0 a year stamping permit applications. She never asked. I never corrected her. It was almost 10 when I got back to my duplex. I sat on the couch and didn't turn on the TV. The heat clicked on and then clicked off. Outside, a dog barked twice and stopped. I tried not to think about the way Marcus had looked at me. Like I was a problem to be managed. A variable that needed controlling. And I tried not to think about the fact that my sister, the one who'd used our dead mother's insurance money to build an empire, hadn't even known I was in the room. But I didn't know yet what her company was really built on. I didn't know about the stamp. Mine, on drawings I'd never seen, on buildings I'd never stepped inside. That came on Monday. Monday morning at City Hall starts the way it always starts. Coffee from the machine in the break room, the bad kind. The kind that tastes like hot water and regret, but costs 50 cents and keeps your eyes open. I got to my desk at 7:42. The building inspection office on the 4th floor is quiet before 8. Just the hum of the HVAC and the occasional click of a mouse from someone else who came in early. My supervisor, Ron, stuck his head in my doorway at 8:15. He had a file in his hand, and the look he gets when something is going to be a problem. "Marshall Elementary," he said. "Gymnasium wing, cracks in the south wall trusses." I took the file. How bad? Bad enough that someone noticed 14 months after completion. He paused. It was an Okonkwo job. I didn't react, or I tried not to. Ron knows Nia is my sister. Everyone in the building department knows. It's not a secret, but I'd gotten good over the years at keeping my face still when her name came up. "I'll take a look," I said. The file was thick. Permit applications, structural drawings, inspection sign-offs. Marshall Elementary was built between June 2023 and February of last year. A standard single-story school building with a gymnasium addition. Nothing complicated. Nothing that should have been cracking 14 months after the certificate of occupancy. I opened the structural drawings first. That's where you always start. The bones of the building. My stamp was on page 3. I know my own stamp. I've pressed it onto hundreds of drawings over 5 years. The raised letters of my name, Kara and Okonkwo, PE 48,732. The state seal in the center. The date stamped beside it. March 27, 2023. The thing is, I didn't stamp these drawings. I had never seen these drawings before in my life. I sat there with the page spread flat on my desk. My hand was steady. I remember that how steady my hand was. I could see the faint impression of the stamp in the paper, the slight indentation where the metal had pressed down. The truss calculations were on page 7. I read them twice, then a third time. They were wrong. Not wrong in the way that engineers sometimes make mistakes. A decimal point shifted, a load combination overlooked. Wrong in the way that told me whoever did these calculations didn't understand what they were doing. The load distribution used a triangular pattern. I don't use triangular load distribution. I never have. I was taught the rectangular distribution method at Meridian State, and I've used it for 12 years. This wasn't my work, but my name was on it. I pulled up the city's digital permit system. The search took about 40 seconds. I typed Okonkwo Construction into the contractor field and filtered by permits requiring P stamp. 7 results. The public library expansion. 2019. My stamp. A fire station renovation on the west side. 2020. My stamp. The Meridian Office Park, 4 buildings. 2021 and 2022. My stamp on all of them. A water treatment facility upgrade. 2023. My stamp, Marshall Elementary, the most recent. 2024. My stamp on every single page. I printed them all. The printer in the hallway groaned and spat out page after page. I stood there watching it, the bad coffee still warm in my hand, the fluorescent light flickering overhead the same way it had in the parking garage on Friday night. And I waited while the evidence of what my sister had done stacked up in the tray. 23 projects. 6 years. Starting in April of 2019. My sister had been forging my professional engineer stamp for more than half a decade. I called Aunt Pat from my car. I don't know why I called her first. Maybe because she was the closest thing to a mother I had left. Maybe because some part of me still believed that if I just told someone in the family, they would help me figure out what to do. Kara, sweetheart. She sounded distracted. I could hear the TV in the background, some game show with a lot of clapping. What's wrong? You never called during work hours. I told her, not all of it, just enough. My stamp, Nia's projects, the school with the cracks. There was a silence. The game show audience laughed at something. Kara. Aunt Pat's voice had changed. It was careful now, the way you talk to someone you think might be overreacting. Nia wouldn't do that. She's your sister. She built that company from nothing. You know how hard she worked after your mother passed. The stamp is on 23 projects. I didn't stamp them. Well, maybe there's an explanation. Maybe someone in her office made a mistake. You know Nia isn't, she's not technical like you. She probably doesn't even look at those drawings. The drawings have my license number, my seal, my signature. That's not a clerical error. Another pause, longer this time. The clapping stopped. Commercial break. You've always been the smart one, Kara, but being smart doesn't mean you have to tear your sister down. I hung up, not because I was angry, because there was nothing else to say. I sat in my car in the city hall parking lot for a long time. It was 4:30 in the afternoon and the sun was starting to drop behind the municipal building. The wind had picked up. Little gusts of dust spun across the asphalt. Here's what I didn't tell Aunt Pat. Here's what I didn't tell anyone. I didn't need Nia's world. I hadn't needed it for years. In 2021, I bought a duplex on Lansing Street. Brick, 2 units. The plumbing was bad, and the roof needed work, and I fixed both of them myself on weekends while Nia was at business dinners and award ceremonies. In 2022, I bought another one on Calder Avenue. Last June, a third one on Portage Road. 3 buildings, 6 units, worth about $420,000 altogether. Paid off. Every cent. Nia thought I made $94,000 a year stamping permit applications. She never asked what I did with the money. She never asked much of anything about me, actually. I never corrected her. I liked my life quiet. I liked being underestimated. It gave me room to move. But now I was looking at 23 projects, including a school building with actual structural cracks and my sister's signature. Well, my signature on her projects. I didn't know what to do. So I did what engineers do. I gathered the data. I organized the evidence. I put everything in chronological order in a binder with labeled tabs, and then I made another call, not to the police, not to a lawyer, to the State Board of Professional Engineers, Enforcement Division. I reported myself. I thought finding the truth was the hardest part. I thought once I had the evidence, once I'd done the right thing, the rest would sort itself out. I was wrong about that. The hardest part was what my sister did next. The state board's letter arrived on a Wednesday, April 2nd. I know because I wrote the date on the envelope in pencil before I opened it. A habit. I date everything. Investigation 2025-471. Alleged professional misconduct. Okonkwo, Kara N. PE license 48,732. My name. My license number. The system I had trusted for my entire career was now pointed directly at me. Legally, this is how it works. The stamp belongs to the engineer whose name is on it. If the stamp was misused, the engineer is responsible for proving they didn't do it, not the other way around. The burden of proof was mine. I read the letter 3 times, and then I put it down, and then I picked it up and read it again because I couldn't stop seeing my own name next to the word misconduct. The investigator assigned to my case was a man named David Park, Enforcement Division. He'd been with the board for 16 years. I looked him up. His background was in civil engineering, same as me. He'd worked on bridge inspections before moving to enforcement. I wondered if that meant he would understand, or if it meant he would be harder on me because he knew exactly what a PE stamp meant. I met him for the first time on April 4th, a Friday. His office was on the 3rd floor of the state office building downtown. Beige walls, beige carpet. A single plant in the corner that looked like it had been dying slowly for about 3 years. The kind of office where people make decisions that end careers. Ms. Okonkwo. He shook my hand. Firm, brief. I've reviewed your self-report. Walk me through what you found. I walked him through it. The Marshall Elementary plans, the truss calculations, the 23 projects, the dates, the methodology differences. I spoke for about 40 minutes. He took notes on a yellow legal pad. Didn't ask many questions, just let me talk. When I finished, he set his pen down. You understand that the board has to investigate you as well. Yes. Your sister's company has no record of a licensed engineer on staff. Ever. That's unusual for a firm doing public contracts. I know. He looked at me for a long moment, then he closed the folder. I'll be in touch. The next day, the city put me on administrative leave. Ron called me into his office at 9:15 in the morning. HR was already there. Two people I'd known for 5 years, sitting on the wrong side of the desk, not quite meeting my eyes. "Pending the outcome of the board investigation," Ron said. He was reading from a piece of paper. He sounded tired. "You'll continue to receive your salary, but you can't access city systems or enter City Hall in a professional capacity until this is resolved." I nodded. There wasn't anything to argue about. These were the rules. I understood the rules. I packed my desk into a copy paper box. My PE stamp, the physical embosser, the metal one, went in last. It weighed about 8 ounces. It felt heavier. The security guard at the front desk was a man named Walter. He'd worked at City Hall for 11 years. Every morning for 5 years, he'd nodded at me when I walked in. "Morning, Ms. Okonkwo." "Morning, Walter." When I walked out with my box, he didn't say anything. He watched me go. His face was the same as always, but his eyes followed me all the way to the revolving door. That was the thing about being under investigation. People stopped knowing what to say to you, so they said nothing. I was loading the box into my car when my phone buzzed. A text from a number I hadn't seen in a while. "I remember your work, the bridge model, 87 pounds on popsicle sticks. This isn't you. Prove them wrong." Dr. Samuel Chen, my structural analysis professor from Meridian State. He'd written my recommendation letter for my PE application 6 years ago. I hadn't spoken to him since graduation. I stood in the parking lot with my phone in my hand and the box on the passenger seat, and I read that text 4 times. Then I put the phone in my pocket and got in the car. I didn't cry. I'm not someone who cries, but I sat there for a while before I turned the key. Nia filed her counter-complaint on April 10th, a Thursday. I found out from David Park. He called me at 2:15 in the afternoon. "Ms. Okonkwo, you should know. We've received a formal ethics complaint from Nia Okonkwo against you." I was in my kitchen. I had been making tea. The kettle was still hot. "What does it say?" He paused. When he spoke again, his voice was careful. "It alleges that you've been using your position with the city of Meridian to target Okonkwo Construction Group. That your self-report to the board is part of a pattern of professional jealousy and attempted business sabotage." The kettle clicked off. The steam stopped rising. "She's saying I did this to myself," I said. "That I forged my own stamp to destroy her company." "I'm not commenting on the contents. I'm informing you as a procedural matter. The board will investigate both complaints simultaneously." "Both complaints?" "Yes. So I have to prove I didn't forge my own stamp, and I have to prove I'm not sabotaging her at the same time." "That's correct." I looked at the tea I hadn't made. The mug was still empty. The tea bag was still in the wrapper. "Thank you for letting me know, Mr. Park." I hung up and finished making the tea. My hands were steady. They stayed steady through the whole thing, the water, the bag, the spoon. I was good at keeping my hands steady. I'd learned that skill somewhere along the way. Maybe when my mother died. Maybe during the 8 years of night school. Maybe it was just who I was. The family calls started that evening. Aunt Pat called first. She'd heard from Nia. "Kara, what are you doing? Your sister says you're trying to destroy her business. Her lawyers are involved now. Do you understand what that means?" "Aunt Pat, she forged my stamp on 23 projects." "You keep saying that, but Nia says the board is investigating you now. Not her, you." Her voice cracked a little. "I don't know what happened between you two, but this isn't how family acts." I didn't say anything. The game show was on in her background again, or maybe a different one. They all sound the same. Marcus posted something on the family group chat. A long message about how some people couldn't handle Nia's success. How Nia had helped me for years while I struggled in a government job. How it was sad when family turned on you out of jealousy. 47 people liked it. I counted. My cousin Grace texted me separately. "Is it true you're going after Nia's company? Mom said you filed something with the state." I didn't respond. What was I going to say? That I wasn't the one who filed first? That my sister had been stealing my name for 6 years while I paid off duplexes and kept my head down and asked for nothing from anyone? None of it would matter. Nia had told her story first. She was always better at that than me. That night I sat on my couch with the binder of evidence on my lap. 23 projects, dates, permit numbers, calculation errors. I'd organized everything with labeled tabs and a table of contents. It was good work. Thorough. The kind of documentation that holds up in a board hearing. But Nia's counter-complaint had changed the math. Now I wasn't just proving the stamp was forged. I was proving I wasn't the one who forged it. And I was proving I wasn't sabotaging her business. 3 things to prove, 1 investigation to do it in. Nia thought filing that complaint would make me stop looking. She thought I'd get scared. Back down. Let it go. She didn't understand something about me. I'm an engineer. I don't stop until I find the failure point. And I was just starting to understand where the cracks really were. David Park's office hadn't changed. Beige walls, beige carpet, the dying plant. But the stack of files on his desk was thicker now. My binder was in there somewhere, so was Nia's counter-complaint. It was May 15th, a Thursday. I'd been on leave for 6 weeks. "Walk me through your methodology," Park said. He had his yellow legal pad out. Same one, maybe, or a fresh one. The handwriting was small and precise, so I walked him through it. How I calculate load paths. The rectangular distribution method I was taught at Meridian State. The way I set up my calculations so another engineer could review them and follow every step. The software defaults I use. The way I check my work. And the Marshall Elementary drawings. The calculations use triangular load distribution. I don't use triangular. I never have. I opened my binder to the page I'd marked with a green tab. The formula on line 3 of the truss analysis is ASCE 710, but it's applied wrong. The load combination factors are backwards. Any licensed structural engineer would catch this in about 10 seconds. Park wrote something down. What about someone who isn't a licensed structural engineer? They wouldn't know it was wrong. They'd be copying from a reference manual, an old one. I turned to another page. The same error appears in all 23 projects. Same wrong formula. Same wrong software defaults. If different engineers had done these calculations, you'd see different mistakes, different approaches, different software. These are all the same person. Park set his pen down. He leaned back in his chair. It creaked. A sound I'd heard a lot in the last 6 weeks. Chairs creaking while people decided things about my career. "Ms. Okonkwo, I've confirmed something you should know." Okonkwo Construction Group has never employed a licensed professional engineer. Not in the entire history of the company. I had known it, but hearing Park say it, a state investigator, sitting in his beige office with his yellow legal pad, made it real in a different way. "So every project they stamped," I said. "Every public contract, every building, every school, was stamped by someone who didn't work there." He finished the sentence for me. The question is who. After the meeting, I went to City Hall, not to my office. I wasn't allowed in my office. I went to the basement, to the records archive. The city of Meridian moved to a digital permit system in 2018. Before that, everything was paper. After that, every permit application, every set of drawings, every inspection report was filed electronically. The system timestamps everything. IP address, date, time of day, user credentials. It's designed that way so nothing can be changed later without leaving a record of who changed it and when. Most people don't know this. Most people don't need to know. I needed to know. The records archive is in the basement of City Hall. It's not a basement the way people imagine basements. No dripping pipes. No flickering lights. Just rows of climate-controlled file storage and a small office with 2 desks and a window that looks out onto a concrete wall. Miriam Torres has worked in that office for 28 years. She was in her mid-50s, with reading glasses on a chain around her neck and hair that had gone mostly gray. Her desk had a mug that said World's OKAYESD Archivist and a photo of a cat I couldn't identify by breed. There was a small space heater under her desk, even though it was May. Basements stay cold. Ms. Torres. She looked up from her computer. Miriam. Nobody calls me Ms. Torres except the city manager and my ex-husband. Miriam, I'm Kara Okonkwo. I work in building inspection. 4th floor. I know who you are. She took off her glasses. You're the one who reported her own stamp. I read about it. Of course she had. City Hall is a small town inside a small city. Everyone knows everything. I need to see the digital submission logs for Okonkwo construction permits, I said. The timestamps, the IP addresses, everything the system recorded when the permits were filed. She looked at me for a moment. Then she turned to her computer and started typing. Which years? 2019 through 2024. That's a lot of permits. I know. She typed for a while. The keyboard was one of those old mechanical ones that click with every key. I counted the clicks while I waited. I was too tired to stop counting. Okonkwo Construction, she said. 23 permits with PE stamps in that date range. You want all of them? Yes. The printer on her desk hummed and started feeding pages. This system timestamps everything, you know. IP address, date, time, user ID. It's all in the metadata. Nobody ever asks to see the metadata. She adjusted her glasses. People think the important part of a record is what it says, but the important part is when it was made and who made it. Everything else is just words. I stood there while the printer ran. 46 pages, 2 per permit, the submission log for each one. The Marshall Elementary permit was near the bottom of the stack. Filed March 27, 2023 at 2:47 p.m. IP address 192, 168, 47 103. Registered to Okonkwo Construction Group, 1400 Meridian Business Park Drive. Filed by user, N. Okonkwo. I stared at the page. Not at the IP address, not at the user ID. At the date. March 27, 2023. 2:47 p.m. I knew where I was on March 27, 2023 at 2:47 p.m. I was in Indianapolis, 200 miles away. Presenting at the Midwest Structural Engineering Conference. The title of my presentation was Load Path Optimization in Retrofit Design. It was scheduled for 2:30 p.m. in Conference Room B. I remember because I was nervous. I always get nervous before presentations. My hands don't shake during investigations, but they shake before conference talks. Makes no sense, but that's how it is. Miriam, I said. My voice sounded normal. That surprised me. Can you print me the metadata certification for this page? The official one, with the city seal. She looked at me over her glasses. The certification that stands up in court. Yes. She didn't ask why. She just turned back to her keyboard and clicked a few more times. It'll take about 20 minutes. The certification has to go through the city clerk's digital signature system. I'll wait. I sat in the plastic chair next to her desk while the certification processed. The space heater hummed. The cat in the photo was orange. I noticed that now. An orange tabby with one ear folded down. 28 years, Miriam said. She wasn't looking at me. She was watching the progress bar on her screen. You know what I've learned in 28 years? What? Records don't lie. People lie. Records don't. I went home and built my case. The conference records came first. The Midwest Structural Engineering Conference keeps attendance records for continuing education credits. Every licensed PE needs those to renew. I called the conference office. A woman named Brenda pulled my file. Registration confirmation. Kara Okonkwo, PE 48732. Registered February 8, 2023. Presentation schedule. Thursday, March 27, 2023. 2:30 p.m. Conference Room B, Load Path Optimization in Retrofit Design. K. Okonkwo, City of Meridian. I asked her to email me the official records. She did. While I waited, I called the hotel. The Marriott Indianapolis East keeps reservation records for 3 years. I was within the window. The front desk manager pulled my folio. Check-in March 26, 2023, 4:18 p.m. Checkout March 28, 2023, 7:02 a.m. Room 412. Do you need anything else? The manager asked. Yes, can you send me the itemized receipt, the one that shows everything charged to the room? The receipt arrived in my inbox 12 minutes later. I scrolled through it. Room service, parking, Wi-Fi. And lunch at Shapiro's Deli on March 27, 2023. 12:47 p.m. Reuben sandwich, $14, $82 plus tip. Paid with my Visa ending in 3091. I sat at my kitchen table with the pages spread out in front of me. IP log from City Hall. Conference registration. Presentation schedule. Hotel folio. Credit card receipt. At 2:47 p.m. on March 27, 2023, someone at Okonkwo Construction's office filed a building permit with my forged PE stamp. At 2:47 p.m. on March 27, 2023, I was standing in Conference Room B at the Indianapolis Marriott, 17 minutes into a presentation about load path optimization, 200 miles from Meridian. It's not possible to be in 2 places at once. Physics doesn't allow it. Neither does the State Board of Professional Engineers. I called David Park the next morning. Mr. Park, I have something you need to see. He came to my duplex that afternoon. I'd never had a state investigator in my living room before. He sat on my couch, the same couch where I'd sat 6 weeks earlier, the night of the awards dinner, not knowing any of this was coming. He picked up each piece of paper, read it, set it down, read the next one. When he got to the credit card receipt, he almost smiled. Almost. The corner of his mouth moved about a millimeter. A Reuben sandwich, he said. I like Reubens. He set the receipt down. Ms. Okonkwo, I've been doing this job for 16 years. Most cases take months to build. You've done it in 6 weeks. I had help, I said. Miriam tours in records, the conference office, the hotel manager, and the engineering analysis. That part I did myself. He nodded. He looked at the papers spread across my coffee table. The IP log, the conference records, the hotel receipt, the credit card statement, my engineering analysis, 42 pages of calculations showing the same wrong methodology across all 23 projects. I'll submit my report to the board next week, he said. They'll schedule a hearing. He stood up. At the door, he turned back. You should know, Ms. Okonkwo. The counter-complaint your sister filed, it actually helped your case. How? Because now the board has to investigate her claims too. And when they do, they'll find the same thing I found. Okonkwo Construction never employed a licensed engineer, so who was stamping their plans? He put his notebook in his pocket. The counter-complaint was supposed to bury you. Instead, it opened a door your sister didn't know was there. After he left, I sat on the couch and looked at the evidence spread across my coffee table. IP logs, conference records, hotel receipts, engineering calculations. 42 pages proving what I'd known since the moment I saw my stamp on those Marshall Elementary drawings. I had everything I needed. The hearing was scheduled for June 20th. A Friday, 3 weeks away. I had the evidence. I had the investigator's report. I had 42 pages of engineering analysis and a Reuben sandwich receipt that placed me 200 miles from my sister's office at the exact moment someone used my stamp. But I wasn't ready for who would show up at the hearing. The night before the hearing, I couldn't sleep. That's not quite true. I didn't try to sleep. There's a difference. I sat on my couch in the living room with the evidence spread across the coffee table, the same coffee table where David Park had sat 3 weeks earlier, picking up each piece of paper like it might break. IP logs, conference registration, hotel folio, credit card receipt, 42 pages of engineering analysis, my PE stamp. The stamp sat at the corner of the table. The metal embosser, about 8 ounces. I'd been carrying it with me everywhere for weeks. In my purse, to the grocery store, to the gas station. I don't know why. Maybe I didn't want it out of my sight. Maybe I needed to remember that it was mine. I picked it up and ran my thumb over the raised letters of my name. Kara N. Okonkwo. The letters were cool. Metal stays cool unless you hold it for a long time. The phone rang at 9:12 p.m. Aunt Pat. I almost didn't answer. But I'd been doing the hard things for 3 months. One more wasn't going to kill me. Hello. Kara. Her voice was different. I'd heard Aunt Pat sound a lot of ways over the years, warm, distracted, disappointed, defensive. I'd never heard her sound like this. Quiet, uncertain, like she was reading from a script she didn't recognize. The board sent out their evidence summary this afternoon to all the parties. She paused. I'm listed as a witness for you. I hadn't known they'd sent the summaries. David Park must have forgotten to mention it. I got the report, she said. All 30-something pages, I read it twice. Another pause, longer. Kara, the things in that report, the IP addresses, the conference records, the hotel receipts, 23 projects. Her voice cracked on the number. How long was she? She didn't finish the question. She didn't need to. 6 years, I said. The first one was April 2019, the Meridian Public Library expansion. The sound she made was something between a sigh and a cough. I told you she wouldn't do that. I told you to let it go. I said you were tearing her down. I remember. I was wrong. 3 words. I'd waited 3 months to hear them. And now that they were here, they didn't feel the way I thought they would. They just felt like words. The hearing is tomorrow, I said. 10 o'clock. Room 3A at the State Office Building. You can come or not. I'll be there. She hung up first. I sat there with the phone in one hand and the stamp in the other. The heat clicked on. The heat clicked off. Outside, the same dog that barked every night barked twice and stopped. I looked at the stamp. The weight of it. 8 ounces of metal in my name. It felt heavier than it used to. Conference Room 3A at the State Office Building is not a courtroom. It's a conference room, long table, office chairs, a projector screen on one wall, coffee urns in the back next to a stack of styrofoam cups, the kind of room where budgets are discussed and quarterly reports are presented. But on Friday, June 20th, at 10 o'clock in the morning, it was the room where my career would be decided. 40 people. I counted. 5 board members at the front, 4 men and 1 woman, all licensed engineers with at least 20 years of experience each. A court reporter with her stenotype machine. David Park sat at the side with his yellow legal pad. Miriam Torres was in the back row with a folder of certified records. Nia and Marcus sat on the left side of the room with their lawyer, a man in a gray suit who kept checking his phone. And Aunt Pat, in the very back row, near the door. She was wearing a navy dress I hadn't seen before. Her hands were folded in her lap. I sat on the right side, by myself, with my binder and my evidence and my 8-ounce metal stamp. The board chair was a man named Dr. Harold Webb, no relation to Marcus. He was 65 or so, with white hair and glasses that he pushed up his nose every few minutes. He'd been on the board for 11 years. I'd looked him up. This is an investigative hearing of the State Board of Professional Engineers, he said. Case number 2025-471. In the matter of Kara N. Okonkwo, PE license 48,732, and the counter-complaint filed by Nia Okonkwo against same. He read from a paper. The words were formal. I'd expected that. What I hadn't expected was how quiet the room would be. 40 people. Nobody coughing. Nobody shuffling papers. Just the hum of the projector and the click of the court reporter's keys. David Park presented his findings first. He spoke for about 20 minutes. His voice was calm, measured, the same voice he'd used in his beige office with the dying plant. The board's investigation has identified 23 construction projects between April 2019 and February 2024 that bear the professional engineer stamp of Kara N. Okonkwo without her knowledge or authorization. Okonkwo Construction Group, has never employed a licensed professional engineer at any point in its operational history. The board's investigation further finds no evidence to support the counter-allegations of professional sabotage filed by Nia Okonkwo. Nia's lawyer stood up. The counter-complaint raises legitimate questions about motive and... "The board will hear from Ms. Kara Okonkwo now," Dr. Webb said. He didn't look at Nia's lawyer. "You'll have your turn." I stood up. I had my binder. I had my evidence. I had been preparing for this moment for 3 months. Exhibit A, the IP log. "This is the digital submission record for the Marshall Elementary structural drawings," I said. I put the page on the projector. "Filed March 27, 2023 at 2:47 p.m. from IP address 192, 168, 47 103. That IP address is registered to Okonkwo Construction Group's office at 1400 Meridian Business Park Drive. Filed by user N. Okonkwo." I put the next page up. "This is my registration confirmation for the Midwest Structural Engineering Conference in Indianapolis. March 27, 2023. This is the conference schedule, my presentation. Load path optimization in retrofit design was at 2:30 p.m. in conference room B. I put up the hotel folio. "This is my hotel check-in, March 26. Checkout March 28. Room 412 at the Marriott Indianapolis East." I put up the credit card receipt. "This is my lunch receipt from Shapiro's Deli in Indianapolis. March 27, 12:47 p.m. A Reuben sandwich, $14, $82 plus tip." I looked at the board members. Indianapolis is 204 miles from Meridian. At 2:47 p.m. on the day this permit was filed, I was 17 minutes into a presentation about structural load paths. I was not at my sister's office. I was not filing a permit. I was not stamping drawings. The room was very quiet. Exhibit B, the engineering analysis. I reviewed the structural calculations on all 23 projects. Every set of calculations uses the same methodology: triangular load distribution. ASCE 710 load combinations applied with the same error. The load combination factors are reversed. I put up a page showing the error. I don't use triangular load distribution. I was trained in rectangular distribution at Meridian State University. I've used it for my entire 12-year career. Any licensed structural engineer would identify this error within seconds. The person who did these calculations was copying from an outdated reference manual. They didn't understand what they were copying. Exhibit C, the notary. The notary stamp number on the Marshall Elementary permit is 48,721 MD. I have never used a notary with that stamp number. My notary, the one I've used for every legitimate filing in my career, is Maria Delgado, stamp number 39,204 MD. The board can verify this with the Secretary of State's notary registry. I set the last page down. My hands were steady. They'd been steady the whole time. "That's my case." Nia's lawyer stood up again. He did his best. He asked about the counter-complaint. He suggested that maybe someone else at Okonkwo Construction had filed the permits without Nia's knowledge. He asked if I'd ever directly told my sister not to use my stamp. "No," I said. "I didn't know she was using it until March 24th of this year. I reported myself to this board 4 days later." He tried to ask about my history of jealousy toward Nia. Dr. Webb cut him off. "This board doesn't find allegations of personal jealousy relevant to the question of professional misconduct. Do you have anything related to the stamp?" Nia's lawyer looked at his notes, then at Nia, then at the board. No further questions. What happened next took about 4 seconds, but I remember it frame by frame. Aunt Pat stood up. She was in the back row near the door. When she stood, the court reporter stopped typing. The board members looked up. Nia turned around in her chair. Aunt Pat didn't say anything. She just walked, down the side aisle, past the coffee urns, past Miriam Torres in the back row, past the empty chairs on my side of the room. She sat down next to me, didn't speak, didn't touch me. Just sat there with her hands folded in her lap, the same way she'd been sitting in the back row. But now she was on my side. Nia stared at her. Her mouth opened and then closed. Marcus put his hand on Nia's arm and she shook it off. Dr. Webb cleared his throat. The board will now deliberate. It took them 40 minutes. I sat in the hard plastic chair with my binder closed on the table and my aunt sitting next to me, not saying anything, and I waited. I waited through the deliberation. I waited through the recess. I was good at waiting. I'd been waiting for 6 years without knowing it. The board came back at 12:15 p.m. The board finds that the evidence clearly establishes that Kara and Okonkwo did not stamp, authorize, or have knowledge of the 23 projects in question. Her professional engineer license is fully exonerated with no finding of misconduct. Dr. Webb looked at Nia. The counter-complaint filed by Nia Okonkwo is dismissed in its entirety. The board refers this matter to the State Attorney General's office for consideration of criminal charges related to professional license, fraud, and forgery. He took off his glasses. This hearing is adjourned. The room didn't erupt. Nobody clapped. That's not how these things work, but Miriam Torres caught my eye from the back row and nodded. Just once. David Park closed his yellow legal pad and put it in his briefcase. The court reporter packed up her machine, and Aunt Pat sat next to me, still not speaking. Her hands were trembling slightly in her lap. I reached over and put my hand on top of hers, just for a second. Then I packed up my evidence and my binder and my 8-ounce metal stamp, and I walked out of conference room 3A. Nia was standing in the hallway. Her lawyer was talking to her, but she wasn't listening. She was looking at me. I kept walking. Kara. Her voice, I knew that voice better than almost any voice in the world. I'd heard it at our mother's funeral, making arrangements while I fell apart. I'd heard it at family dinners, telling stories that made everyone laugh. I'd heard it at her awards ceremony. Well, no, I hadn't heard it there. She hadn't spoken to me there. I stopped walking. I didn't turn around. I hope it was worth it, she said. I stood in the hallway of the state office building with my binder in my arms and my sister's voice behind me. And I thought about the question, was it worth it? My career, my license, my name, 23 buildings, a school with cracks in the walls. 6 years of my sister signing my name. It wasn't about worth, Nia. I started walking again. I didn't look back. The board voted before lunch, but the hardest conversation hadn't happened yet. The board's written decision arrived on July 3rd. 12 pages. I read it at my kitchen table with a cup of tea that went cold before I finished. Okonkwo Construction Group. Contractor license revoked. Civil penalty of $175,000. All 23 projects flagged for mandatory reinspection at the company's expense. Referral to the State Attorney General for consideration of criminal forgery charges. Kara and Okonkwo, PE license 48,732, fully exonerated. No finding of misconduct. Counter-complaint dismissed with prejudice. I set the letter down. The tea was cold. I drank it anyway. The Meridian Tribune ran the story on page 1 the next morning. City engineer exonerated, sister's firm sanctioned. There was a photo of City Hall. Not of me, not of Nia. Just the building where I'd worked for 5 years, where the security guard had watched me walk out with a box of personal items 3 months earlier. I went back to work on July 14th, a Monday. My old office on the 4th floor. Same desk. Same chair. Same fluorescent light flickering overhead, the third one from the window. They still hadn't fixed it, but my title was different. Senior Structural Review Engineer. A promotion Ron said was long overdue, investigation notwithstanding. My salary went to $108,000, a 15% raise. Walter, the security guard at the front desk, nodded when I walked in. Morning, MS. Okonkwo. Morning, Walter. That was it, but it wasn't nothing. Nia's company filed for bankruptcy in October. Chapter 7, all assets liquidated. The glass office park on the edge of town went back to the bank. The fleet of trucks was auctioned off. 47 employees got layoff notices. I thought about those 47 people a lot. They hadn't done anything wrong. They just worked for the wrong person. The bankruptcy filing was in the Tribune too. Smaller article this time. Page 4. Nia called me on a Tuesday evening in November, 6 months after the hearing. My phone rang at 7:23 p.m., her name on the screen. I hadn't seen that name on my phone in almost a year. I answered. Neither of us spoke for about 10 seconds. I could hear her breathing. She was in a car. I could hear the road noise. I hope it was worth it, she said. The same words she'd said in the hallway. Maybe she'd been rehearsing them. Nia. 47 people. Some of them had been with me for 10 years. Their kids, their mortgages, all gone because you had to prove a point. I looked at the ceiling. The same ceiling I'd looked at for 3 months while my career hung in the balance. I didn't forge the stamp, Nia. You did. You could have come to me first. You could have talked to me. Instead, you went to the board. I did talk to you. Through the board. Through the process. That's how it works when someone commits professional fraud for 6 years and 23 projects. It wasn't fraud. I built those buildings. I poured the concrete and hired the crews and managed the budgets. The stamp was just. The stamp was my name, my license, my 12 years of work. My voice was still calm. I was proud of that. You never understood what the stamp means. It's not a formality. It's a promise. When I stamp a set of plans, I'm saying I checked every calculation. I verified every load path. I'm putting my name on the line for that building and everyone who walks inside it, for the rest of my career. She didn't say anything. The Marshall Elementary Gymnasium had structural cracks, Nia, after 14 months. If someone else had reviewed those plans before the cracks showed up, someone who wasn't me, they would have seen the errors in 10 seconds. You got lucky. This time. The road noise stopped. She'd pulled over or parked. You could have come to me, she said again, quieter this time. Maybe, I said, but you also could have asked me. 6 years ago, before you used my stamp the first time, you could have said, Kara, I need a licensed engineer for this project. Can you help? And I would have, I would have. She didn't respond. But you didn't ask, because asking would have meant admitting you needed me, and you couldn't do that. The silence stretched out. 5 seconds, 10. I heard a car pass on whatever road she was parked on. I have to go, she said. Nia. She hung up. I sat on my couch with the phone in my hand. The same couch. The same room. Outside, the same dog barked twice and stopped. I didn't cry then either. I'm not someone who cries. But I sat there for a long time before I went to bed. Aunt Pat started coming for Sunday dinners that winter. The first time was awkward. She brought a casserole I didn't ask for and spent the first 20 minutes commenting on the paint color in my kitchen. But she kept coming. Every Sunday. Sometimes she'd talk about my mother, things I didn't know. How Mom had wanted to be an architect. How she'd put herself through 2 years of school before she got married and set it aside. How she'd always said Kara had her brain. She never told me that, I said. She was proud of you, she just didn't always know how to say it. Aunt Pat looked at her hands. I think Nia knew, I think that was part of it. We didn't talk about Nia much after that, but we didn't avoid it either. Some things don't get fixed, they just get lived with. December 1, 2026, 18 months after the hearing. The letter came in a white envelope with the state seal in the corner. I opened it at my kitchen table, the same table where I'd read the board's decision a year and a half earlier. Dear Ms. Okonkwo, on behalf of the State Board of Professional Engineers, I am pleased to inform you of your appointment to the board's Engineering Ethics Committee. Your term of 3 years will commence January 1, 2027. The same board that had investigated me, the same board that could have ended my career. They'd appointed me to help judge other engineers' cases. I read the letter twice. Then I laughed, just once. A short laugh that surprised me more than the letter did. My first meeting was in January. Conference room 3A at the state office building. The The same room where I'd sat on the right side of the aisle with my binder and my evidence and my 8-ounce metal stamp, waiting for 40 minutes while 5 people decided whether I'd ever work again. Now I was sitting at the front table. On the other side, the case that morning was a younger engineer, maybe 28. He'd signed off on structural plans for a parking garage that he'd reviewed but hadn't personally inspected. The plans were fine, no errors, no safety issues, but the inspection report was falsified. He'd trusted a contractor to do the inspection and sign the report anyway. The board members discussed. The chair asked for opinions. The other 2 members gave theirs. Then they looked at me. "Ms. Okonkwo, your assessment." I looked at the file, the young engineer's name, his license number, the parking garage plans with his stamp on them. "There's a difference between an error in judgment and a pattern of negligence," I said. "This was an error. He trusted the wrong person. He admitted it before anyone asked. He didn't try to hide it. Those things matter." I looked at the young engineer. He was sitting where I'd sat 18 months earlier, on the right side of the room, by himself. His hands were gripping the arms of his chair. "I recommend a 6-month probationary period with supervised inspections," I said. "No suspension. He deserves the chance to prove this was a mistake, not who he is." The board voted, 3-1 in favor of probation. After the meeting, the young engineer caught up to me in the hallway. "Ms. Okonkwo, thank you. I don't know what I would have, thank you." "Learn from it," I said, "and verify your own inspections from now on." "I will, I swear." He walked away. I stood in the hallway for a moment, the same hallway where my sister had said, "I hope it was worth it." It was. That evening I sat in my office at City Hall, the office I'd walked out of with a copy paper box in my arms 2 years earlier. My PE stamp was on the desk in front of me. The same stamp, the metal embosser, still 8 ounces, still cool to the touch. I had a set of plans to review, a new fire station on the south side, simple structure, concrete and steel. The calculations looked good. I'd checked them twice. I opened the stamp, positioned it over the approval block on page 1. My hand was steady. It had been steady through the awards dinner and the investigation and the hearing and the phone call that ended with a dial tone. I pressed down. The metal met the paper. The impression came up clean. My name, my license number, my seal. The stamp felt heavier than it used to. I pressed down anyway, because that's what the stamp means. You carry the weight. You press down anyway.